The entire reef keeping hobby essentially is just about keeping water. We are the water keepers, trying to replicate the natural seawater. And we have one goal and one goal only: keeping our water parameters stable. For corals to thrive in your tank, your water parameters need to be in a certain range and they need to be stable from one day to the next. And that, my friends, is where dosing can come into play. So why do we have to dose? Why do we have to dose, you ask? Well, once you start seeing coralline algae on your rock and you start adding corals to your tank, especially SPS and LPS, the corals will start to consume three major elements from the water: alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium. The corals basically use these elements to build their skeletons, so as they grow nice and big, they absorb those elements from the water. And as the keepers of water, it is our job to replenish those elements that they consume. Corals need stability to be happy, so these elements need to be in the correct range consistently. And how do we get the elements within the correct range and stay there consistently, you ask? Dosing, of course. Dosing is essentially just pouring additives into your aquarium to replenish those elements that are consumed by the corals. The only way to tell whether it is time to start dosing your tank is by regularly testing your water parameters. I personally use Salifert test kits. I'm a Salifert girl. I think they are super reliable, easy to use, convenient, and just consistent. So I've always stuck by Salifert test kits. I love them. However, there are other test kits on the market as well, such as Hannah checkers that a lot of people love and I hear good things about. But definitely a good quality test kit is extremely important in testing your water parameters regularly. However, the golden rule, the absolute golden rule to dosing your reef tank is to always test your water regularly, but also never ever ever add any additive into your aquarium without first knowing what your water parameters are. Seriously, golden rule. Do not break this rule, okay? So if you've tested your water parameters and noticed that your alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium are starting to drop, dosing isn't the only way that you can replenish those elements that are consumed by corals. Doing regular water changes can also help add back those elements and works well if you have a tank that doesn't have much coral or has mostly soft corals like zoa, xenia, mushrooms, and the like. Different buckets of salt contain different concentrations of alkalinity, magnesium, and calcium. So if you're noticing that your water parameters are dropping despite your weekly water changes, you can look into getting a brand of salt that has a higher concentration. I personally use Red Sea Blue Bucket for my tank, and as you can see, it lists on the box the concentrations of those elements so you know what you're adding in there. However, as your corals start to grow out and you get more coralline algae on your rocks, the faster the elements like calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, and other essential elements are removed. And soon enough, your regular water changes alone won't eventually be able to keep up with the consumption rate of the corals and keep up with the corals' needs. And that, my friends, is when it's time to start dosing your reef tank. So how do we actually dose? Well, the easiest way is to add 2-part to your tank. 2-part is a liquid that just replenishes your calc, alk, and mag. There are tons of different brands and options out there. Right now I'm using the Red Sea line and I really love it. How much you add to your tank depends on your tank volume. Just look at the instructions. Every brand is a bit different because the concentrations are different. How often you need to dose depends on your consumption rate that your corals are consuming, which involves a little work on your part. To find your consumption rate, you unfortunately, my friend, have to test your water for 2 weeks straight. Yeah, 2 weeks straight every day. You're trying to find out how much of the element your corals are consuming each day so you can replace it and keep that number stable, which we love. We love stable water. We're the water keepers after all. So test every day and observe how much your water parameters are decreasing as you dose each day. So for example, if you test your alkalinity and it's lower than the desired range that you want it to be in, so you dose 2-part based on the instructions. After a few days of dosing every day, you finally get the alkalinity to the desired range. Yay! Well, you gotta keep testing your water still. You gotta keep testing your water still every day to see how much your corals are consuming from that point onwards. So say you find that your alkalinity decreases by 1 DKH if you don't dose for 2 days, right? Well then, that's your consumption rate. Yay! You know your consumption rate. You know now that you have to dose that quantity every 2 days in order to keep your alkalinity stable. I hope that makes sense. But these things, they're not fun, but they must be done for the sake of stability. We are the water keepers after all. So once you find your consumption rate, you still have to test your water parameters once a week. Testing your water is vital for the health of your corals and for your tank to thrive. As the corals grow and as you add new corals, these consumption rates will change over time. Remember, we are the water keepers. We must know our water parameters at all times, so keep track of that in case your consumption rate changes. So that is how 2-part dosing works. The only sucky part is if you're doing it by hand, you gotta do it every single day. No vacations for you, unfortunately, my friend. But luckily, there's a way to get past dosing manually, which is a pain in the butt, you know. And that is automated dosing pumps. Basically, just pour your 2-part and your additives in the doser and calibrate the amounts the pump will dose, and it'll do all the work for you, which is wonderful. Now, another method for dosing other than adding supplements are the use of calcium reactors. They're not really for beginners, so I wouldn't really worry about it, but you can work up to it, especially if you have a big tank. But they ain't cheap, you know, they ain't cheap, but they are good at what they do. A tube filled with dead coral skeletons, and it just dissolves them and then drips that dissolved goodness into the tank to meet your corals' demands for their skeletal growth. And they work really well, but I'm not really going to be going into depth in them in this video. I just thought I'd mention that that is an option also. And that, my folks, is how you dose your reef tank. If you're just starting out in the reef tank hobby, it's gonna be a while until you have to start dosing, just saying. You might not ever need to dose at all and just rely on good old water changes. But when you do have to, it's a pretty easy process. Not even gonna lie, when I first started, I was really intimidated by dosing, but it was kind of silly because it really is an easy process. Just remember to test those water parameters and keep a journal or get an app to track your water parameters to make sure that they stay stable. So yeah, wishing all of you lovely water keepers stable water parameters and good coral growth. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it somewhat helpful in your dosing endeavors. Make sure to smash, demolish, totally crush that subscribe button on your way out. Appreciate it.